Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Neil, Arwin, Refracted Curvature, Righteous Force, Brian's Logic, 10th Man Rising, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello,
Good
hello.
morning.
Good afternoon.
Good morning. Morning.
Get it on! Wow, can't even get a hello in there. Good start.
Good start, yeah, great. No objections by me. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
It's over there. So nice.
I wish it was over here. I got nothing but rain, and I'm trying to move
Oh, dear.
today. Where's the sun?
Oh, shit.
Gosh,
We have the
That
technology.
sucks.
you're
We
gonna
have
need
the
a.
technology. Let's blow up the sun.
Hold on, I hear a
Yeah.
claim. What was that? We have the technology for what?
Let's blow up the sun.
We have the technology to blow up the sun. What's the sun?
It doesn't matter. Let's blow it up.
How?
We'll
You're not
find out
talking
when we
about
blow it
red
up.
matter, are you?
Red
Like
matter?
from-
Oh, there's a claim. What the hell are you think the sun's red matter? What the hell's that?
No. I'm referencing some stupid sci-fi movie, like the remake of Star Trek, where Spock is going around the old Spock with some red matter. And if you drop a droplet of that into something, it'll turn into a black hole or something. So
If
Sorry.
the moon is made out of cheese, what's the sun made out of?
What's a black hole?
Why would I accept that the moon
Orange
is made out of
juice?
cheese? And why would I have any idea what the sun is?
It's
orange
starved
juice.
cheddar cheese.
This is getting crazy. Listen.
no.
The question was any distance to the sun. Well, it is claimed if you have an Earth with a radius, you can figure that out.
Yeah, I got a lecture off my 6-year-old
Well-
this morning. Exactly that. So she's like, we can move around the sun, Daddy. She knows what I'd do. So I was like, oh yeah, what makes you think that? She's like, because it's really, really, really big. I was like, how big? She's like, bigger than Earth as a sphere. I was like, how do you know that? She's like, just do, I just know. I was like, well, logically, what makes you think that it's bigger than us? And all she could do was repeat back the rhetoric. So I'm like, oh, this isn't a good opportunity to tell her what she's being taught or how she's being taught in regards to the trivium. So I did. And I was like, does this logically follow, or are you just talking rhetoric that you're parroting back to me? You know, and sorry, close your ears, 10th Man. I compared it to angels, which she also likes the idea of, and unicorns. She's got all sorts of ideas about what the sky is. Yesterday, she had some of the ideas about there being unicorns in the sky. Was a little bit shattered with some biblical text, which I got her to listen to because she's interested in the sky unicorns. Why wouldn't she be? She's 6. But when she starts parroting off rhetoric to me that relies on an R value and an assumption of sphericity, an assumption of orbital motions, and assumptions of Venus having the same size R value as Earth, and Kepler's third law of interplanetary motions with the begging the question orbital motions already in place, it goes on and on and on, this crap. What are we looking at? That light that moves through the sky? It moves through the sky. What the hell have we got to infer that we're moving around it beyond this begging the question fallacy of orbital motion? Well, nothing is the honest answer. Literally nothing. There's a light in the sky that comes and goes, seems to make the ground heat up and get light. But then it goes at the end of the day. That's why we call it day. But what's that? We move around it. We're spinning about an axis. Any evidence of an axis?
Well,
Well,
the whole thing with
what?
the sun.
Go on, John.
The whole thing with the sun is like the object permanency thing, or kind of get used to handling things and associating tangibility with those things. I think that's one of the reasons that heliocentrism caught on the way it did, because it allowed to have that kind of object permanency with the sun and think of it as
Something you can
an
blow up.
object in space.
Yeah, that's why I took objection to when you said blow it up. I'm like, well, what is it? If I shine a light of a torch onto a wall and you go, I'm going to blow it up. Like, what are you talking about? What, the wall that it's on? I don't know what the sun is, therefore how do you know it's physical to know that you can blow it up? Well, so long as that's, got a good laugh, but so long as that's assumption that's in place, you can say, I don't care what it is, I'm going to blow it up. Because in that statement, it's physical and can be blown up. It's like, what the hell? I don't know what it is. Shout out to James May for the super chat. Just one sec. Says, good day, all, with a thumbs up. Thank you very much for the super chat. Go ahead. Was that Brian?
Yeah, everything can be blown up.
Okay.
But
thanks for your input.
that idea
With enough effort.
It's the Irish coming out in him. We'll have no trouble too.
I mean, even like when you describe the sun, I mean, if you say the sun's a physical light, it's the language there is pretty much, it's right there in the language. It's a physical light. So how can you then claim it's not physical or whatever?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
what does it matter
that's
how
the
far
thing.
it is anyway?
John went first. Go ahead.
What is it?
It is physical. Light's
Well,
physical.
it is a trick of the language.
Yes, it is. Go ahead, John.
It's a trick of language. The way it's defined in our language is one of the reasons that heliocentrism has been so successful, is instead of it just being a light in the sky, we don't know what it is. Now it's a physical light in the sky that is causing
Sounds like a
things.
false dichotomy.
No. He hasn't made his point yet. Go ahead, John.
Well, when you're young, the idea of I was hinting at it with object permanency, right? So it doesn't take much for someone's mind to accept the sun as being something that they could touch if they were able to get up there to it. It's almost built into us to do this equivocation between the things that we can touch that are tangible and the sky.
Exactly. Can you drop and rejoin? You're breaking up a little bit. But exactly. So is light physical? Yeah, we experience light. It's got energy. You can measure it. It's got lots of physical attributes to it. The light that we experience. Well, can you then infer that there's something physical and tangible in the sun? Yes, you can, and yes, they do. But does that mean that something intangible has physicality? It's intangible. You can't know. So you can infer away, but it doesn't mean it's proven. That's why when we're talking about it as a coal-burning plant, right? So Dr. Becky's talking about the days of yore, and they thought that the sun was a coal-burning power plant. And Adam's reaction is, well, has she invalidated that? And the reason for his reaction isn't because Adam thinks it burns coal. Far from it. He's saying, you don't know that it isn't that either. It's just as wrong to say it isn't a coal-burning. You don't know what it isn't either, right? So it's just as far-fetched to say it is a coal-burning power plant or it isn't a coal-burning power plant. It's like the right answer, and there is only one right answer in this instance, is I don't know what the sun is. I don't know how far it is. And all of the things that infer that people do, we've debunked, because those assertions, we don't get very many concave assertions, let's be honest, are typically heliocentric in nature. 93 million miles based on Venus and the transit thereof, utilized within Kepler's third law, with the imposition of an R value that's been assumed and debunked from Earth as a sphere. That's a lot of assumptions to give you 93 million miles and a massive size purely by scale because of Kepler. We don't accept any of that, especially when the R value, the integral part of the maths, has been debunked. We definitely don't accept that, begging the question, assumption in mathematics. So we don't know is the only answer that you're left with. Not, oh, I must offer an alternative and give you a distance immediately. It's just, I don't know what the sun is. I don't know that it has physicality. Nobody knows. That's the truth. If you think NASA know
Right.
what the sun is, then you're kidding yourself. They don't know. Nobody does.
And the problem is even more extensive than that, if I may, for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because even calling light physical is already like kind of tricky, because light isn't really anything until it interacts with something, and then we can register through its interaction it's even there. And that
Yeah.
includes it responding with our eyes.
But that's what we study,
right?
isn't it? The physics is that exact thing, isn't it? It's the physical. It's the physical interaction in this instance. And that's where the swindle takes place, in terms of reifying a physical interaction of light, be it with its energy, transfer or change, if you're trying to harness it in some way, versus something that can physically push you. That's different.
Well, is light affected by entropy, with the exception of the sun moving away in the evening time? Is light affected by entropy?
It like is the entropy. It's like the generation of entropy, isn't it?
Yeah. How do you like? I
Well,
mean,
then it would be
everything
no.
is everything physical is affected by entropy.
Yes.
But
If it
But
causes entropy,
stop. That no,
doesn't
that's
it
wrong.
reject it?
No, stop. That's incorrect. What you've done is you've taken the description of something and ascribed it as a causal influencer. No, nothing is affected by entropy. Entropy is the description of what occurs, as opposed to something that can influence something to affect it. So I just want to correct that, Brian.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
No, you're right. No, is light affected by what we describe as entropy? Would be a better way to.
Well, you could, as
Yeah.
QE says, say that in this case the sun is an entropy generator. It generates entropy. And yesterday Adam
Yeah.
clarified this and saying, look, you can cleave. What was it that got cleaved? I've forgotten.
Oh yeah, he's talking about photo dissociation, the cleaving of the covalent bonds.
Right, covalent bonds.
yeah.
Of course, I knew that.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, but is light itself subjected to entropy, or is it simply an influencer that triggers
we just
entropy?
literally covered that 25 seconds ago.
Yeah, see, this is the
didn't-
thing.
You weren't listening, we know.
Side.
I was listening. I'm right here. I just didn't really
Just
hear
drunk.
that. An answer to that. In that.
You were listening, you just didn't really hear it. Well, that's fair enough. But no, I like, light is the one thing that I have no evidence for. Is the one thing that seems to be not being affected by what we describe as the entropy. I don't know how
Exactly.
entropy, it does cause, it is entropic itself, as in it does like the sun is the greatest entropy generator. Look, why do we have things like deserts? You know what I mean? Like, so like I have plants here that sometimes do better when the sun is not out. Because of entropy. But no, I have no evidence that light is in any way manipulated or affected by what we describe as entropy.
Right, because we can only through interaction and it basically not being light anymore even register it's there, right? So yeah, it has an entropic influence on whatever it interacts with, but without the interaction, it is not altering, it is not transforming.
I think
Isn't
AI
it?
Overlord wants
Hold
to
on a
take. Go
sec.
ahead, AI.
Objection.
Hold on 1 second, John. Go ahead, AI.
I just want to point out how hard it is to stay true to the actual language after Nathan explained that it has no causal power or affectation. That everybody's so far hasn't been able to speak in a way in which they followed the premise Nathan laid out.
Nobody followed
it's
that.
difficult.
Did anybody follow that? I didn't follow that, AI.
No, when you pointed out, Nathan, that there isn't a causal, you were talking about entropy and light, and you pointed out that there wasn't a causal agent. That light is entropy, or like the sun is a massive entropy generator. But the AI's point is, I maybe believe him, clear it up, but his point is that once you point that out, it's very difficult to describe what we're trying to describe after that. I think that's what AI's point is.
Well,
Okay.
another thing
Exactly.
too is the photon, electron, and there's another non-decomposable material.
Neutron.
Right.
Neutron.
Okay. Yeah. That just means that how can entropy decay something that's non-decayable?
But how can
Yeah.
entropy decay anything?
Right. It's the description of the decay. If you want to use the word decay.
Right. Right. And something that can't decay any further. How is it going to decay?
So is
Yeah.
entropy really an effect, or is it actually more like a
No,
pattern?
no. Hold on. It took me a second to logically process what he was asking. Doesn't mean there's no answer, Arwin. Doesn't mean there's no entropy. Bloody hellfire. You take these things to an extreme in a heartbeat, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. No. So once that particle reaches that point, it's not reaching absolute zero, is it? It's still going to be doing something, isn't it?
Yep.
Right. Well, there you go. So entropy's still affecting it, if you want to describe it in that reification where it's causal. You can still describe the effects of entropy in that particle.
Right. Like you can apply the inverse square law to the path of light if you wanted to.
But isn't that just a pattern, right? It's a
Hold on.
derived
That's an issue.
pattern.
Oh,
that
hold
occurs
on. Hold
always.
on. Am I about to start feeling very dumb about this? Yeah, you can.
Light dispersion.
That sounds like a big problem, though, John. Given our
So-
criticism of Tyson yesterday, when we talk about his journeys for his lights based on his R value, when you talk about the inverse square law, doesn't that buy directly into that notion of how light behaves? Am I wrong?
Well, it only deals with distance.
Exactly.
Doesn't necessarily deal with the journey.
Precisely. That's a problem, isn't it?
Isn't the inverse square law a description of entropic effect?
I would say yes.
Well,
That would
it's
as
light
well
dispersion
start out with a
over
concentrated
distance.
or yeah, but you start out with a concentrated source of energy, and the energy disperses as it fills available space. That's entropy. Less energy per cubic meter or wherever you want to measure it over time.
Yes.
Till eventually, like if you just took all the light out and only made one light blast and then let it do its thing, eventually it would get to the point where the energy per cubic meter has decreased to the point where it's essentially not there, so negligible. I would describe that as entropy.
So what you're saying is
I would too,
there's a
and
capability of
that's-
describing how light disperses with the arrow of time, aka entropy.
But there's a
Right.
bigger question, and that is, does dark exist? Because if you can't say with
What?
certainty that dark exists, then it's just like
That's not.
I suppose you could see it. I suppose you could see it like gas filling a volume, light dispersing, that kind of way.
No, you're confusing the decay of matter as just entropy.
Yeah, but who said dark? Who meant dark? I don't get why.
I
Dark
did. I said, does dark
Hold
exist?
on. Well, based on the first law, we're looking solely at the second law. When you describe the dispersion of light, it's not going to be dissipating to zero or reaching absolute zero or any of those sort of physical descriptions, is it? The energy that was within the light has changed. But that's all that's happened. So you start having to look at the first law. Because if you're going to describe it with the inverse square law, where's it ending up in that equation? Wait, what are you ending up with? It doesn't describe where it ends up going because it's not going to be destroyed. It's not going to vanish. The light may,
Right.
but that's got energy. So what happens to the energy according to the first law?
Well, look, the overall
Interacts with
energy
something and releases
from the
light.
initial blast.
Hold on, John.
Well,
Just go
we're
ahead.
I'm just calling this a blast. Go ahead.
I'm just trying to clear the airways for you, AI. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just calling the initial light thing a blast because not everybody uses that term, right? Because there's this argument about what light is. All right, whatever. Whatever happens in the initial blast, the amount of light that you release has a certain amount of total energy. You could quantify that in a cubic meter, let's say, at the point of blast. Then over time, as the light does its thing, the cubic meter area that same blast energy total, let's just call it 100%, starts to fill up, right? It fills the available space that it has to fill, essentially. as it goes over time, over distance. And the amount of energy per cubic meter is dissipated to where there's 1% here, 1% here, 1% here, 1% here, but it all adds up to 100 just over a larger volume. So in total, the same amount of energy is there, but the amount of effective energy in a particular location is less and less and less and less over time, until you could claim that you've reached the absolute quote unquote zero of that light's maximum potential per cubic meter. So I would define that as energy loss over time that's available to do work, which is practically entropy, is it not?
No, that's perfect. There's nothing wrong with any of that description because light has energy. And we're perfectly within the realms of the description of first and second law to describe it that way. Very elegant, actually.
Yeah, but is dark affected by entropy?
What do you mean it's dark? What is darkness? The absence of light.
Absence of light.
The absence of energy to be measured. It's back to the wave diffraction pattern, isn't it? Oh, right. Well, we can see it. Like we can see the interference in the TV signal when we rig up a TV to say there's nothing there. There's no signal. It's a similar effect to that. Well, if you're not measuring anything or you've got anything to measure, how can you describe it? Well, you can only describe it as the absence of something else. Likewise, when you describe the actualization, those two bars on the photographic plate, you're describing it as the absence of something else, the absence of interference in this instance. But you're saying the absence of light. You're like, okay, that can be qualified in a number of different ways. But are you trying to get us to ascribe some physicality to the absence of light? Because that doesn't work like it does when you actualize something in wave function collapse.
Yeah, fair.
No, I'm
now fair enough. But when we describe darkness, go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say that it's the absence of visible light.
We'll get to that.
Always something.
Yeah,
there.
we'll get to that. Go on, AI.
So when we describe darkness, we describe it in a relativity to the amount of light available. You know, we don't claim in our everyday life, well, let's just say on the world that we have access to, that there's anywhere where it would be absolutely dark. Because even if we created a room and shut it off from external light sources, right, we know that there's rays, allegedly, that can pass through material. We also know that there would be quote unquote photons or quote unquote energy packets of light trapped in the room bouncing around. So there'd never be a case where there was total darkness, unless you say that the light is traveling, right? And then it's not here at a particular point. So this cubic meter or this cubic inch is devoid of any light energy at that particular moment. However, I will throw a wrench in the works. There's been this thing where people think something doesn't exist and darkness doesn't exist. But I have a Bible verse that says that God hangs the earth upon nothing and sets its bounds by darkness. So take that up your pipe and smoke it.
Okay, because that's what we need in this arena. That's the attitude we're looking for.
I'll go back to my question. Does dark exist?
Yes. The absence of light exists.
Yeah, just provided scripture.
But that's
You ever
not,
been, just on a
not
side note,
dark.
Brian, have you ever actually been in absolute darkness?
No, that's the point.
I have.
I've
I've
only
been in
less
what I would
light.
call absolute darkness. So in when my folks lived on a farm, it was in part of Britain which was the lowest light pollution in the whole country, bar none. There was no place you could get that was darker. And when there was no moon, and it was obviously nighttime, you could not see your hand in front of your face if you went outside. That's how dark it was. It was absolutely, that's what I mainly use my telescope for. I'd bung it in the back of the car, take it up to my folks, stick it up on the top of the hill. And they also had a hot tub. You could just sit and look. In other words, turn all the lights off around you. Again, you can't see your hand in front of your face. So what does that, what do you think that means you can see? You can see the stars beautifully. Open up, the longer you stared at them, the more you could see. It was absolutely astonishing. I highly recommend it. If you can find an area near you that's got very, very, very low light pollution, forget the telescope. You don't need it. Just go to that place, turn off your engine, get out of the car and just stand there looking up. Believe me, it will be worth it. Anyway, I just wanted to check if you'd actually experienced darkness because it's amazing. But you'll now say, well, no, you experienced the light of the stars, which you can't disagree with.
But no,
there
well,
is,
I don't want to be nitpicking, but I know that. I was going to probably say that, but no, I've been in what you're talking about. Because I spent about half my life in the countryside where there was no light. I mean, you have to remember, this is Ireland, where there's a way less lights than there is in England. So it's super, super dark. So you walk outside the door, you have to stand there for several minutes before you could even attempt to take a step forward because you don't know where you're walking. But once my eyes adjusted, then you could see things. You could see there was different darknesses. Like a tree might be a different dark from a shade, things like that. So it wasn't in total dark. There was a lot less light, but you weren't in total dark.
No, fair enough, I agree. But I'm sure I could put you in a box and seal it up and you would experience it and you'd know what darkness was. But in any event, one of the things that Mark Sargent... Just one sec. Just one of the things Mark Sargent talked about back in 2015 was having some night vision goggles. And he talked about what he saw with the night vision goggles in the night sky, in amongst the stars. And he talked about things flying around and all sorts. And my first reaction is, you don't need goggles for that. You can see all that stuff flying around in the sky like aliens if you've just got it dark enough and you can just let your eyes adjust for literally 5 minutes. You can take in exactly that. Now, obviously, if you've got light pollution around you can't, and the goggles will definitely help. But you don't need them. You can just go out to an area of very low light pollution and just look up, as long as there's stars in the sky.
I think Mark was talking about what he was talking. Just quickly, I just want to, what he was talking about is seeing things that you can't normally see, not like stars and stuff, but actual things moving around.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the same thing?
No, that's what I'm talking about. What he
Oh,
described is exactly what I've seen. And my wife can attest to it. We've sat in the hot tub. It's very nice. And we've been able to sit out in the cold, because we're in a hot tub, for hours looking up at the stars. And as I say, the longer you're there, the more you'll see. And what Mark Sargent described with his goggles is exactly what I would describe. Identical in every way. Describing things moving around like UFOs in the night sky. Stars that do stuff that you wouldn't expect, move to a point, stop, change direction and move. All that sort of stuff. You can see that with your own eyes.
Yep. I attest to that. I took my son star watching. We witnessed like a alleged star, whatever it was. It seemed to react to us looking at it. And then it moved to the right, did a little curly Q, moved again to the right, did a little curly Q, moved again to the right, did a little curly Q. Very, very interesting. I got the impression that I was looking at it.
Don't do it alone. That's my only advice. If you do it alone, so if I wanted to, I could, she's not here actually, but I could call my wife in and go, without prompting, what did you see in the sky when we were in the hot tub? And she'd parrot verbatim what I said without any prompting, because she saw the same as I did. So when you describe AI Overlord, you going stargazing with your son and describing something changing direction, you're not going to get some arsehole come along and go, it's probably just a floater in your eye. Whereas if you've got someone with you, a witness, you can go, no, we both saw the same shooting star come from the horizon upwards and disappear. Or we saw the same light phenomena that moved, changed directions, that got larger, that did whatever it did, made a squiggly path through the sky. So long as you're both looking at roughly the same area and talking about what you're seeing.
Yeah, I have had interaction with those exact lights in the sky, where I actually was able to, we had a very powerful flashlight. I was able to flash them with the flashlight, and it flashed me back. And I got to the point where I could wave, when I was out in the dark, put my hand up like to kind of wave, and I would get a flashback.
Right.
You know, and I had actually had that exact asshole who was a relative of mine who I hate, who was treating me like a lawyer. And then one night he happened to be out at a beach one evening where I was in the winter, two of us, and it was still really dark, but the sky was lit up because it was so dark. There's no trees around us and everything, very, very dark, no light. And we saw 8 things moving around within 5 minutes. So these things are real, and these things are really there. What they are, I don't know, but this is real.
They're satellites, Brian.
No, well, it's not that you need to necessarily ascribe any description to them, right? Because without the shackles of a heliocentric belief, none of that is of any concern, is it? So what would be my attitude if someone was to say it and say, well, therefore UFOs, or therefore whatever the assertion they make, satellites. I go, no, you're just seeing stuff in the sky. It's only because you've got a heliocentric paradigm that you need stuff to be orbiting a sphere Earth. Therefore, whatever you see in the sky must be described by something orbital. It's like, if I don't have that assumption, I don't care. I just look at it and go, look at that thing moving around. I wonder what that is. No idea. Cool though, isn't it? That's it. That's as much concern I ascribe to
Can I
it.
give a silly thing that I heard while watching physics lectures?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like legitimate physics lectures with an audience, right? At official companies, official organizations, right? Like university level and above. Physicists will get on there and they will say that humanity is evolving where we're going to merge with machines. And eventually we're going to evolve past the need for the machine and become disembodied energetic consciousnesses that are going to float up into the cosmos. So some of those things that you see in the sky are actually our ancestors that have already evolved into star-like beings. For real.
Wow. People really want to be gods, don't they? They want life eternal.
Yeah.
And that's
That smells like bullshit.
Say again?
Oh, well, it obviously is. But the point I'm making is that, yes, it's ridiculous for certain heliocentric claims. But remember, a lot of their claims are religious and metaphysical in their end goal and end point.
Precisely. You need to know what the sky is. Well, we know, and we can tell you. And we've got priests who can back it up. And we've got scriptures that can back it up. So when we say it's a rock in a sky vacuum floating around, check out our magic books that say it's exactly that. And look at our history that says it's exactly that. And they've known for thousands of years, Dumbo.
Yeah, keep in mind, this idea about transcending to a spirit consciousness didn't occur in a church, right? Didn't occur in a witch's coven. It occurred on a lecture stage at a physics lecture.
Yeah, there's a bit far-fetched, that.
Which is where we come in, right? We're the antidote.
Well, they had a lot of material to pull from.
None of it's science. So while you say they were around a table at a physics lecture, they undoubtedly were coming up with ideas for how the world works and Big Bang philosophies and all the rest of it. So they're philosophers. But they're not scientists.
Yeah, it was sponsored by Facebook's parent company. So the actual lecture, this is a joke, was called Metaphysics.
There you go. Proof is in the title. They tend to put these sorts of things on the front cover. Pseudo-Ramonian for space-time, i.e. space and time bending, i.e. current gravity. It's right in the title. Pseudo.
Well, if we go back to the original question, which was any evidence of the distance to the sun, not so much the real question, but a sidebar question that is very pertinent, and it actually brings it back to its root and its origin is, why is there a claim size and distance to the sun? Why? And it all goes back to shadows. You have to explain how the shadows we see in reality, how they would work over a globe Earth with a radius of 3959 miles. That's where it comes. That whole thing starts with Eratosthenes. The claim of Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes measured an elevation angle. So he measured a horizontal distance. And the shadows were the proof of that. So how did they turn that into a globe? They must make the sun bigger, way bigger, but they also, because it has to be bigger in diameter than the globe to create the shadows, it also has to be far enough away to match the angular size we see in the sky. Well, if it even has an angular size. I've never seen its actual size, so I can't claim it has an angular size. I don't know what it is. But you can measure a half a degree kind of thing as an average. But that's why they have a claim of a size and a distance to the sun, because they need to explain the shadows. So they have this big heliocentric universe story all based around them having to explain shadows, as opposed to, now the sun is there, we're on a flat plane, that's why the shadow looks like that. They couldn't handle that. They needed to turn that into a shadow on a globe. And how would that work? How would you get those shadows on a globe? Well, you'd have to have a much bigger sun, and then it'd have to be so far away to match the angular size we see, blah, 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 blah. You know, so that's where that comes from. It's shadows.
But it's actually violating the very principle that they're using in the first instance. So you did mention it. He's taking an elevation angle. So when they bend the surface that they took the angle from, they can justify the faraway sun for the shadows. But they've just violated the angle measurements that they're trying to explain. So it's kind of asked about face when you've measured it with a flat earth, right, Brian?
But yeah, that's the whole point, you see. They start arguing about the sun and how on a globe this creates the shadows. But the only reason they have the curved surface for their shadows is because they ignore the elevation angle. So they went away from the elevation angle and went straight to the sun, how big that has to be and how far away that has to be to give them what they needed to give them mathematically. But the whole thing started with an elevation angle from Eratosthenes, who, from logical inference, all I would say is that what the man was doing, if he was real and did that, is he was just demonstrating how you measure using angles, elevation angles, how you measure using the elevation angle and the zenith angle, measure a distance. That's what I say he was demonstrating at the time. I'd say that's what it was. But anyway, that's just speculation. But
so therefore proving you need a flat earth to have a globe.
Well, yeah, you can't have those shadows in the first place without a flat plane. You can't measure the distance to the GP point of the sun without the flat plane. You can't do any of these things.
Well, might as well ask the question. Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
No.
There's no such thing.
Right. Any
Adjacent
evidence?
and curved.
What about any evidence that level runs equidistant to the centre of Earth?
Any evidence that all points along a level runs equidistant to the centre of the Earth? Is that what it is? That would be a no.
We're happy to forego the rest of the housekeeping questions, mainly because we're like 40 minutes into this show now. We've got a video. Smolin, hopefully I'm saying that right. How can space and time be the same thing? Okay. Didn't we cover this yesterday? Okay.
Well, yes, but there's going to be one more after this, so keep going.
One more after this? What do you mean?
Well, space-time, Einstein. I mean, what? We're just going to watch one video and say that's it? No, you got this one. I got another one after this one. So just take this one for today.
Okay. Well, is everyone keen to do this? I'm going to start at a random point, semi-random.
Absolutely.
I'll scroll through with a few of the subtitles to get an idea of when they're talking about causal relationships. I might be wrong.
If you need more videos, I got about 70 of them.
No.
Yeah, man.
I've
encouraged people to send them. It's only 10th man doing it.
Before you start,
just a quick shout out to Divergent Droid. Just good to see him back. Glad to see you well, mate. Nice to see you back in chat.
Our best mod was.
Yeah, I recommend just start at the beginning. Just start at the beginning, Nathan.
Start at the beginning? Really?
Oh, right when it says play. Yes.
Yes, I know how to get to the beginning. Thank you.
They're mobile. They can curve. They can slow. They can expand. And but the two are really unified together. And
you sure we can't just start about the 4-minute mark? Because we're going to be forever.
We need to understand space-time is critical to understand the nature of our universe.
Is it? Understanding the nature of space and time when reified into 4-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian geometry? Definitely not. Yeah, that's conceptual. Pseudo-Riemannian geometry isn't something that affects our reality. So the nature of universe isn't a real concern to me when we're talking about 4th-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian for space-time bending, which is what this is about, right?
It's the most important question.
Okay, so
what is time? What is...
Is it? This is the most important question? Really? How so? A question about pseudo-geometry is the most important question. Anybody agree with him? Other than debunking it, what level of importance do we ascribe here to space and time, given that it's a pseudo-Riemannian for space-time that this particular discussion's about?
The most important.
Nathan, you know that they need to take it into mathematics because it's not physics, it's not reality. And for their paradigm to exist, it could only exist in the math. So this is why they're doing it.
But to him, it's the most important thing. This reification of mathematical descriptions in pseudo-4 space. How is this important at all?
Well, of course it is. I'll tell you why it's important. Because that's the only place they have their globe. They have their current paradigm. It's so important they have to have them make it up in the math world because it's not in the real world. That's essential for the globe.
There it is. That's what I was looking for.
Space.
Okay, even more important than what are the particles and what are the forces. And we want to understand.
So, more important than the physics. It's our pseudo maths. Yeah, well said. Is this guy a good wizard? Who's this guy?
I think so.
So it some people have thought of it as it's the arena in which all the act of particles and physics play out. But
right, what he's saying is some people would consider pseudo-Riemannian 4 space as a reality where stuff happens. It's not. It's a pseudo-4 space geometry created by Einstein. It's not a place that stuff in the physical happens. Very much not the case at all. Just a reified mathematical description of things in a dimension that isn't real. Amazing that, isn't it? Tell us again how important it is.
But it may be more than that.
Even more than the most important thing ever. Than what, a realm where the physics takes place. It isn't. So it's definitely not more than a place where the physics takes place, because it isn't a place where the physics takes place. So no. Anyone else want to pipe up on this? Feel free.
Well, there hasn't been enough context yet. I haven't gotten to where they're actually going with it yet.
We know where they're going.
It's
It's in the
gonna get
title.
there, Brian.
It's in the title. How can space and time be the same thing? They can't. Space, what, like length, breadth, and depth? Where I describe my table that I can touch being. What about the time? What are you talking about? What, how much entropy has affected it? If I reify it as a cause? I'm going to have to be careful with my words from here on. Aye, he's ace. He's not here at the moment, but shout out to you.
Basic division in the subject.
Time is a concept. Time is a concept. Space is a description, so they're not the same. That's really the end of that. There's no need to make the video.
I agree, Brian. Exactly. But we see it as important that these people reify it and describe your world with it. That's why we're here. That's what we do best. Please share the show.
Subject.
Yeah,
goes
I know that
back.
then though. Their video was pointless.
Yeah, totally. It's just here to deceive you. This is just a big lie. Convincing you that you live in a fourth dimensional space-time. Why? Well, because you've got a whole worldview and paradigm that is out there to convince you of exactly that. For religious belief purposes. And the exploitation that it provides, the people who disseminate it.
A long time. It goes back to debates between Newton and his contemporaries, Leibniz and other contemporaries.
See, if you've got actual scientific validity, there's no debate about it. You've got a cause and effect relationship validated by experiment, if it's real science. There's no debate, ever.
And the big question is space an arena?
You don't have to ask any questions about whether or not your 4D space-time geometry is real and an arena. No. Fourth dimensional space-time is a mathematical description described in the title as pseudo. That's sham, fake, not real. What you want to question whether or not it's the arena that the world actually has things taking place in? Definitely not. A pseudo 4 space-time geometry. No, we don't exist in a 4D space-time geometry. Shout out to Godzilla37, who says, big shout out to DD, welcome back. Divergent Droid. Thank you for the super chat.
In which things happen, in which...
No, things don't happen in 4D space-time.
Things come on and off.
No, things don't turn on and off in it either. Another shout out to Godzilla37, who says, this one's for free for being a member. Thank you very much for the super chat.
Or is there no arena? Is space just a network of relationships?
Relationships, what, like in physical terms? No, definitely not. In mathematical terms, oh yeah, definitely. It's a fourth dimensional space-time geometry you can describe in the conceptions of maths. Definitely, the relationships between the maths. Oh yeah, you can describe those. What was that? How they affect us in physical terms? In the space we occupy? No, definitely not.
A way to ask the question is if the whole universe were moved entirely 10 meters to the left.
Why would we ask such nonsense?
Would it matter?
What's a
Does
universe?
it even mean something to say that? Because
What if I asked whether or not it would matter if I moved the universe 10 meters to the left? Well, what he's doing is doing a ham-handed way of juxtaposing his crap comparison about moving the universe with the actuality of him claiming what the universe is in its entirety?
Because no relationships would change.
Right.
And Newton said, yes, it is different. And Leibniz said, no, it's even wrong to ask the question because...
Questions in science would be in regards to physical phenomena that we can study. There's no debate when it comes to science. The great questions are irrelevant. What caused that to happen is what science deals with. This is philosophy.
There's no discernible difference between the universe here and the universe 10 meters to the left. And this is...
Oh, really? Says who? Have you moved it? Are you just making this philosophical, nonsensical statement based on your hyperbole? Because it seems like that. And it is like that, because it matters not how you move the universe, you can't move it, but you want to conjure the impression that universes are going to be moved with your descriptions that are going to follow, I don't doubt.
It's a very question of whether space...
Go on.
Has he defined what he means by universe yet? Because I'm not sure what he's talking about.
The guy interviewing him, or
what's a universe?
The guest isn't exactly appealing for the Socratic method to be adhered to, Brian, let's be honest. He's just nodding along and going, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
even more to that.
Go on, John.
Well, more to that, too. Distance moves is in reality, right? How are we going to move reality where distance happens outside? It seems so flawed as a question. Like saying...
That's because it's not a question he's really asking.
Something like that.
Even answered by saying it's inconsequential, it'd make no difference. All he's doing as a crap wizard, unlike Tyson, who's a lot more amenable, or whatever the word is, he's trying to just plant the seed of universe-sized stuff happening. Worlds being moved, universes being moved, godlike stuff. He's just conjuring the image in the mind of the person he's talking to, and then relinquishing the idea that would in any way need justification by saying it wouldn't matter either way. But then all you're left with is the seed of, so we're talking about the whole universe. That's all he's doing. It's crap. He's not a very good magician.
He's validating his maths, isn't he? At this point, he's tried to show that his maths are so powerful, he can demonstrate that if you move the whole universe 10 meters that way, it stays the same. So his maths is correct. So he should trust his maths going forward in the next assertion he's going to make using maths.
A framework, an absolute background, or whether space is an aspect of reality that grows out of
a framework.
Framework? Me and Brian in unison. That sounds familiar. That sounds like nonsense pseudoscience peddled by flat earthers, doesn't it, Brian?
Yes, the Ethereans.
The Ethereans! They say the same thing, don't they? In their nonsense pseudoscience world of anti-space.
Well, that's interesting, that, isn't it? That we've abandoned science. We're going to use a logical framework. We can't use science. Won't support our argument. So we'll adopt a logical framework. I wonder if they've got their logical framework defined, or if it's just one that just floats around and manifests at will and changes.
Well, no, they have, just by the title, just going to answer Adam, because he was rhetorical, but because of the title of the video, it's space and time that they're talking about. So their framework is the pseudo-Riemannian four-space geometry developed by Einstein. That's made clear in the title.
No, I'm on about the framework for proof.
Proof,
Well,
that would
they
be
have
evidence.
gravitons.
Evidence is provided by systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis. You can get that proof from the scientific method if you follow it.
But not a logic. Don't understand any logical framework.
Well, it has logic behind it. If A, then B, or if A, not B, that's a hypothesis. But you have to insert an independent and dependent variable, aka a phenomena you're studying, that you go, wonder what caused that, and a presumed cause of it that you vary to validate it caused it. That's proof. That's an experiment, by the way.
Yeah, but their ether is gravitons, a massless particle that moves around instantaneously.
Can you show me one?
Um,
I mean,
No.
you just said it was massive.
I've got a couple in the boot of the car.
I said
Wicked. Let's have a look at them.
massless.
I want to see how well they bend.
Massless, not massive. Massless particle.
Mass
that moves around.
less.
Yeah.
Right. Let's move on before we get into this nonsense.
The network of relationships, of causality, of change.
Causality? Wow, that sounds cool. Look at this smiling face. I'm about to talk about causality. Cause, well, like cause and effect. Yeah, that's what science deals with. The cause of an effect. That's causality. But you're not going to be talking about that, are you, Smug Smiler? No. You're going to be talking about your logical framework. Nothing with empiricism attached, no proof. Just your logical framework that's been debated about by scientists. I mean, pseudo-scientists. Talking about maths. Debating and philosophizing about maths.
Is the fundamental question, as has been for 400 years.
Okay, so
That's it? The fundamental question about logical frameworks and their causality? Definitely not. I mean, maybe there's a lot of pipe-smoking wankers sat around talking shite. But who cares?
So if we're trying to understand the nature of space at this,
If we're trying to understand the nature of anything, we'd be putting it through the scientific method, because the nature of something is how it behaves. And how it behaves is a phenomena. And phenomena is the exclusive purview of scientific method when it comes to understanding the causal relationships, aka causality. So if we're trying to understand the nature of space, well, that would be a concrete noun if you're describing mere three-dimensionality. So that wouldn't be the subject of science at all.
this point, we're dealing with.
I was going to say he's not looking for a cause and effect relationship. He's looking for the cause of causality, is what he said.
Absurd.
Different concepts as well. We're dealing with relationships.
Concepts? Why is that being discussed? What, like conceptual fourth dimensional mediums? Those sorts of concepts. You see, conceptually, I don't give a shit about your nonsense, you bloody slipper-wearing, pipe-smoking, fundamentalist religious zealot. None of this is of concern to me. These are just idiot philosophers, as far as I'm concerned. Their nonsense isn't worthy of the Western worldview.
Yes.
We're dealing with causation.
Are we? What, like cause and effect exclusively dealt with within science? That cause is the independent variable in your hypothesis? When studying effects, that's things that happen in nature. So this is part of the swindle. This is science that they're talking about. They're not saying it, but that is definitely what is the causation and the cause when you're talking about how the nature of things are. But that is definitely not what these wankers are talking about. It's an outrage. They're talking about your nature. No. They're making you think about nature and how it could be in the mind's eye of these philosophers. Thinking about things doesn't make things so.
Yes.
And so those are very fundamental ideas, but what you're saying is that the
Fundamental ideas, which one are we talking about? Fundamental ideas or the nature of reality? Because fundamental ideas don't affect reality, they're just ideas.
understand space, we may have to understand
Back to understanding concrete nouns in nature.
those other two, which may be more fundamental than.
He just keeps using this big word fundamental to make him, what, think that this is the whole world that you're talking about at a fundamental level? When you're not? This is a crap magic trick, my friend. Yeah, look, you need to watch a bit of Neil deGrasse Tyson if you want to know how to do these magic tricks, because you're not doing a good job.
In space itself.
Yes, and indeed, one can take general relativity, and if you...
Well, can we? You can. Oh, thanks for the permission. Can we also shove it in a space rocket and blast it off into the sky vacuum? Can we do that too? Do we need your permission? I don't think we do.
ask, what in that...
You're telling me what I can ask after I accept relativity? Oh, thanks. This is really nice of you to give me all this permission. I won't be asking your permission when I rip this to shreds in a few seconds, I'll be honest with you.
Sophisticated mathematics, is it really...
Mathematics? What, like conceptual descriptions? Like, not physical reality, then. Sophisticated conceptual descriptions? Oh, they're not affecting my reality, my friend.
Someone from Discord wanted to say something, Dave.
Oh, go ahead, whoever it was.
Oh, I just wanted to say I got a few Elon Musk videos, him talking nonsense.
Sounds great. Maybe tomorrow. Got about 5 more minutes on this live show. We will cover it again in the after show. And to be fair to 10th, we are about 2.5 minutes in, and there's already been plenty of meat on this bone, so I'm glad I went right back to the beginning within about 10 or 15 seconds.
Nature of space and time.
Right.
What it is asserting about space and time.
Sorry, what's it? you stumbled over that and sort of stuttered about what it is saying. What's it? Have we just reified the mathematics that are sophisticated into something with lips asserting things? What's it saying? What's it asserting? Hello? This sounds like a reification fallacy.
Is it the most fundamental relationships are relationships of causality?
That's what it's saying, is it? Once you've reified it and given it lips, it's saying that, is it? That's what it's asserting? No, this is a reification fallacy.
This is the modern way of understanding Einstein's theory of general relativity.
Understanding fourth-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian fourth space-time bending.
And so...
Yeah, let's be honest. The modern, well, a more real modern, because this is modern. Us, we're modern. Way of viewing Einstein's general relativity is that it's a crap version of H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, isn't it? That's what it is. It's like really bad sci-fi.
Well, H.P. Lovecraft based his nonsense off Einsteinian nonsense.
Say that one more time, John.
H.P. Lovecraft based his nonsense off of, heliocentric nonsense. It's sort of like Scientology, same idea.
Or Mormonism.
Yeah, but he's not trying to promote it as physics and science.
Out the structure, an event happens and light goes out of it. We have these pictures of light cones going out. And if you...
All right, so now he's alluding to having some sort of evidence to what he suggests. We're going to be back to lights in the sky, right? So all of this bullshit's going to be backed up by pictures of lights in the sky. He's just dropped it in there subtly.
By pictures, does he mean photographs?
Might be photographs with just so stories about relativity that go along with it. But who cares? Pictures of lights in the sky? So what?
Travel from that...
As light goes out over time at the speed of light, it covers in greater and greater distance.
At the speed of light, light covers a greater and greater distance because of the speed of light. Ascribing causality to this description in mathematics that's wrong. It's Brian will now detail. Or not. I mean, we could just round out. You'll get it in the after show when he's come back from having a poo.
Sorry, I walked away from the phone. A speed of light? No, there is no speed of light. There's no one-way speed of light ever measured, and probably never will be. The two-way speed of light is based on 4 pre-assumptions and 2 averages. It's a calculation that is purely dependent on Kepler's analemma being correct, which would involve a globe Earth and its 12-month off-center orbit around a heliocentric sun.
Is he not denying what Neil deGrasse Tyson said yesterday? Is he not affirming a journey now?
Seems to be, yeah. There is a contradiction we will highlight in the after show. But with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a member and all that good stuff. And another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!